Hello and welcome to Outnumbered the Podcast. I'm Audrey.
And I'm Bonnie. We are experienced moms to a combined total of 19 children.
In our weekly episodes, we explore relatable topics using our perspectives of humor and chaos.
Tune in for advice and encouragement to gain more joy in your parenting journey.
Hey everybody, we're back and we have another one in our homeschool or helping kids with their studies series. So today we're going to be talking to you about foreign languages, and we think that this is kind of applicable to any language that you are helping or teaching a kid.
As a side note, this totally applies to like ASL or, kind of off the beaten path foreign languages that we don't always think about, right? So I have quite a bit of experience learning and teaching foreign languages. I lived in Mexico for quite a few years growing up. And so have a lot of memories of learning a foreign language as a young child. And I did have a funny little story I wanted to share, and I'm probably going to botch this. So if my brother's listening, he has to forgive me. But I just remember and this is a famous story in our family. He went to school as a young child. He must have only been like 6. And came home in tears, was really upset, and this is immersion, right? We're going and speaking full Spanish, these kids that don't really know much. And he was really upset because people couldn't get his name right. This one little boy in particular kept getting his name wrong. And my brother's name is Patrick. And it's a little bit tricky for a native Spanish speaker. There's not really those consonants all smashed together, right? So he kept saying, my name is Patrick. And the kid would give him all sorts of variations of the name that was not right. Anyway, the kid finally settled on Plache. I'll just call you Plache. And he goes, no, it's not Plache. Coincidentally, that's actually my nickname for my brother now. We call him that all the time. He's in my phone as Plache. Plache. And he, 6-year-old starts crying, no, my name is not Plache. So he came home and was just really upset about it and told my mom, he won't stop calling me Plache. Oh, and what's this little boy's name? Rovlerto. Or something equally Paclo or something. He just made up something. Clearly not an actual name that my brother was not picking up. They were having the same kind of problem. So, we just have to be patient with each other when we are learning to speak foreign languages and with our children, and to realize that there's a lot of things that go into adapting to each other's cultures.
Oh, well, we're excited to talk to you guys about this one today, because learning and teaching a second language to a kid, whether that be a foreign language that you speak with your mouth, or like you mentioned, ASL, it's a great brain builder for everybody involved, us as parents, helping them, teaching them, and the kids too. There's so much research out there that shows cool stuff about learning a second language.
Yes, absolutely. I have to say that one of my favorite things to do in the whole world is read some sort of literature in my own native English as well as in a foreign language that I speak, because you learn so much about the language, about the piece of literature, about the people who translated it. It's just so fascinating to understand all the different nuances of language. And I actually studied language in college. I was a linguistics major, and it's a really, really fascinating concept if you haven't really dived into it. A great way to learn more about your own language as well. So today we have 5 tools to help our kids learn, and we're going to share also our own personal experience with foreign languages, and some of the programs and methods that we've used in our homeschooling experience.
All right. Our first tool is to start them young. You can't ever really start them too young on a second language. And in fact, if you think about it, that's when they learn the best, right? Is the younger they are, the better they learn. In fact, some research shows that by around age 12, the synapses, which is the little connections in the brain, they kind of close. You have all of them by that age. And so if you start learning a language, or even hear a language before that age, then eventually at some point in the future, you could learn that language and speak it authentically, like a native speaker. But if you start to learn a language after that age, then you don't have those pathways built in your brain, and it's no longer possible to sound like a native. You can learn the language, or it's extremely difficult to master that. But if you even just hear it before the age of 12, around 12, it's pretty magical. That information is there and can be used later in life. So tool number 1, start them young.
Yeah, isn't that so fascinating? So there is some science behind just turning on Sesame Street in Spanish for your kid, or French, or whatever you've got access to, right? Just from personal experience, I began learning Spanish in earnest at about age 5, but I did hear it a lot growing up. My parents are not native Spanish speakers, but they both knew it before they were married. And so that was kind of their secret language that they would talk in around us. The only problem being once we moved to Mexico and learned Spanish, then it was no longer their secret language because we understood what they were saying. But I think that that went a long way in helping me. Years later, when I had a chance to go move to another foreign country and learn another foreign language, I had a lot more intensive training in this other language, but Spanish still remains my strong suit because I learned it so young. And my accent is considerably better in that one than any other language I've tried. It's just really, really fascinating. And I will also say that although when I did learn this other language, it was Russian, was my third language. It was a lot easier for me to learn it than some of my peers who are learning along with me, I think because of this history. So it's just so fascinating how your brain works, how it compartmentalizes everything and creates those pathways early on. Yes, and you know, if you doubt this at all, look at your baby who can't do anything but lay there and cry at birth, and within 2 to 3 years they are a fully fluent language speaker on top of learning how to crawl and eat and walk and do everything else. It's incredible. Their brains, and it's because they're just so malleable. These synapses are forming hourly, right? And so as they get all this language stimulus, they just learn so rapidly. So if you can add another language in there. Side note, if a young baby does hear multiple languages, I know a lot of people get worried about confusing their child. It will sometimes take them a little bit longer to speak clearly, but then they will have a leg up on their peers because they will have heard two different ones, and the brain is very intelligent at sorting those out. So maybe you're in a condition or in a situation where you can speak one language to your child and your spouse can speak another. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, what's funny about kids who are bilingual or multilingual is that, well, I had this experience where we were around these kids and their mom spoke Spanish to them and their dad spoke English. Well, their dad spoke English some too, but everything in their world was English except at home they spoke Spanish. So we were around these little kids and I just spoke a little bit of Spanish to him, and they looked at me like, yeah, we know you. you don't, you know, like, little 3, 4 year olds are like, yeah, right.
We know better than you already, lady.
Yeah. Yep. So as far as method goes, immersion works best for the youngest ages, but any exposure is great. No exposure hurts. So, when my youngest or oldest now were very young, I had a CD, I think it was, of just songs in 9 different languages, and it would just expose them to these languages. Just anything was great.
So
But
interesting.
but yeah, you think about a baby, you can adopt a baby from any country in the world and bring them into your home, and they will learn your language. So
Yes.
you think about it, it doesn't matter what culture, what genetics, the
Mm-hmm.
baby can learn any language. It's really, really neat to think about.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that there are many cultures that learn multiple languages at once. So many countries where they have 2 or 3 national languages, so the children are constantly picking up multiple languages, and it seems like it would be very, very confusing. But the brain is just extremely intelligent and adaptable, and is able to sort them out. What's interesting is I'm seeing this happen with my children. My oldest children, I was not great about involving a lot of language in their lives. I think I was just kind of overwhelmed with a lot of little kids, but we're a lot better now. And my younger ones have a much better accent. My little 4-year-old, when she starts speaking Spanish, she speaks a lot with grandma too. Grandma will come over and speak Spanish with her. Her accent is incredible. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, we should take you to Mexico. You fit right in. Okay. So tool number 2, and that is to just have fun. As with any educational quest, as soon as you make it a chore, the kids don't want to do it, right? As soon as you keep it fun, then it's like, oh, I want to try. For example, one of the things that my mom started doing with my children is she would come over and offer them a piece of gum, but they had to request it in Spanish. And so everyone loves when grandma comes over because they get to say, can I have a piece of chicle? And make sure that it's very no or low pressure situation, right? If they can't say it, she still gives them the gum. She just makes them try it, right? It's not like it's high pressure. Like if you can't ask where the you're bleeding and you have to ask where the ER is in Spanish. Like, they will
Yeah.
get to the high pressure situations if they end up traveling there. Like, you just make it
Uh,
fun, make it really easy.
yeah. Yeah, that's totally right. Like I think it's hilarious that my 2-year-old has a little lisp, but he can still roll his R's for Spanish. I'm like,
It's
"What?"
amazing.
Oh, yes. Okay. So the best way to make them not want to learn is when we start getting heavy or negative or intense. It's just not fun. So at most kids at young ages, they don't have to know or learn a second language. So there's not like any timelines or assignments due or anything. We're talking at the very youngest ages. So there's no reason not to make it fun. And if you continue that into the older ages, like say you do have a kid taking a class in school and you're trying to help them out, just keep it fun. Like there's no point in doing anything else, because then they've got this difficult thing that their brain is trying to do, and then you've attached some negative emotion or something to it. It's just not going to work. So absolutely love this one. Stay positive, stay fun.
Right. One thing I will say here is that social inhibitions go a long way in harming the learning of a foreign language, because it requires a lot of courage to open your mouth and say something that will probably be wrong, because you will be wrong 1,000 times more than you will be right when you start speaking a foreign language, which is one of the reasons it's very difficult for adults to learn, is because of the inhibitions, not necessarily, I mean, also the brain is older and slower, but because they are not fearless like the kids. They'll just say something and go, oh, it was wrong, big deal. But for a 14-year-old or a 30-year-old, it's a lot scarier. And so to make it a game, or even purchase foreign language games and practice letting it just roll off, letting the mistakes roll off, right? Don't make a big deal about it. Don't let anyone make fun of each other when they say it wrong. You guys can all laugh at each other. You might even have to laugh at yourself at the same time, right? And say, oh, I said it wrong. Oh, I sounded like this or whatever. But that is a huge aspect to learning a foreign language in a safe environment, is to not allow those inhibitions and that fear to creep in, because then they won't even try, right? A few other ideas for making it fun is finding someone online to speak to, right? We live in this super connected world. In a matter of a few clicks, you can find somebody on Facebook that would Zoom with you and chat in a foreign language with your kids, right? You can try labeling things around the house. We're going to talk about different types of learners later on, but this is great for visual learners. With language, it's a little bit tricky because it's all in the head and coming out the mouth, but if they can see it read, that's a little bit helpful. And you can practice when the family gets together. Like dinner time is a great time to practice things. Listen to Dad, what we learned today. And they can chatter back and forth, and Dad's so impressed. And everybody, rallies around each other and encourages each other to try out this new skill.
Yeah, that is awesome. Just when it's your goal to make it fun, then you start looking for different ways, and it just really is. There's a lot of tools, resources out there that you can use to make it fun. So yes, that is our next tool, is to tailor it to their learning style. And as you guys know, in our other homeschooling episodes, we've talked about the 7 different learning styles and how to learn your kids' learning style. So go back and listen to some of those other episodes. If you don't know your kids' learning style, we've got some great resources linked in those to help figure out your kids' learning style. But go ahead and tailor this learning a foreign language to their learning style. So we're going to just real quick go through each of those 7 learning styles and throw at you some ideas of ways to help a kid with that learning style learn a foreign language.
That's right. So first one is visual or spatial. Like I was just mentioning, they like to take notes. So I am a visual learner, and I know I've shared this example in the past, but when I was learning Russian, so my third language, I was an adult, and it made me crazy because I could not write down the words that they were saying. They weren't. This program I was in was not letting us take notes. They wanted everything auditory because the alphabet is different. And I'd already learned the alphabet before I started this program, so I just was dying to take notes because it would not compute. Like, I cannot hold this in my brain. I need to see it. And as soon as we were allowed to take notes, it was like, oh, finally, helps so much. So if you're not that kind of a learner, understand that it's really important for us to read it. We just can't do it without the notes. They often think in pictures and learn best from visual displays or slideshows, posters. Anything that they can get their eyeballs on will help a lot.
Yeah, which is funny thinking about learning a language, which is mostly using your mouth, not your
Yeah,
eyes, but hey,
not very
they're,
visual. Yeah.
no, they're connected. Okay, the second learning style is auditory. So these guys probably maybe learn language easier than others, because part of learning any other language except sign language, ASL, is going to be for auditory learners. So it's really, really like they're just prone to learning this. They so use music, anything where they're hearing language, audiobooks in a different language. They interpret the underlying meaning of the words through listening to not only just the words spoken, but the tone and the pitch and the speed and other phonological nuances of the speech. So they're going to pick up way more than just the words by listening to it spoken. They like even reading aloud in the foreign language, hearing themselves speak it. Maybe if they're taking a class and school are not getting it, have them record the lesson and then go back and listen to it later. Audiobooks, songs, movies. There's a lot. This one just kind of seems maybe more intuitive, that they need to hear the language to learn the language. But that's especially important for these kind of learners.
Right, right. And these learners tend to be pretty exceptional at picking up accents because they hear the
Yeah.
nuances a lot better than maybe the rest of us clonking
Yeah.
around, right? They're just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is a different dialect. I'm going to try it a little differently." It's pretty fascinating watching.
Yeah. I have a brother-in-law that must be an auditory learner because he speaks English, so he has, the English accent, but he can mimic the different American accents so good. Like, he can speak
Yeah.
American like an American. He can speak it like a Texan. He can speak it like somebody from Tennessee. It's pretty funny. He must be an
That's
auditory
great.
learner.
Yeah, for sure. And and also as a foreigner, it's probably a little bit easier to pick up on them because it's all foreign to him,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Whereas we like, oh yeah, I think he had a little bit of an accent, but we just we sift through that really easily to get the meaning, and he probably has to work at it a little bit
Right.
better. Yeah. So the third one is the verbal linguistic, also a huge boon when you are learning a language, right? They love to interact with words and sounds. They love to discuss things, ask questions. They love to teach others. This is something, it's funny, I'm not an auditory learner, but I do think I have kind of a knack for linguistic stuff, and to talk. They love to talk, it's pretty fun to chat. It's getting me to shut up. You can't do.
No, but it's real easy for those kind of learners. They just yeah, they do. Like, you hear them speaking the language sooner maybe than other kids do, because they're making it happen with their tongue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth kind of learner is the physical kinesthetic learner. These guys love hands-on activities. So you're learning different foods in a different language, have them right there. And then they love to touch, feel, and experience anything in this language. So like games like pantomime or charades, those things can actually help them later remember or make a connection to a foreign word. Like if you mime eating an apple, and then they have to guess it in, say, Spanish, then they're going to remember that phrase, because they're actually going to remember first what you looked like or what they did when they were miming that. So anyway, that's kind of a fun part for a physical kinesthetic learner.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a language to teach that one, there's ASL for you. They'd be
Yes.
fantastic at that. Yeah.
Yes.
So the fifth one is the logical or mathematical, and obviously this one might be a little bit more difficult, but maybe not. Sometimes language and math have really interesting connections. They just are expressed a little bit differently, right? They like processes. They like analysis. They like collecting data. They like solving mysteries. So this is kind of fun when you're looking for games or activities to do with them. They might like some more of those tricky tasks given to kids learning foreign language in a school setting. So like verb conjugations or things that are very methodical, if that makes sense. Whereas the rest of us are like, oh, conjugating verbs. These guys are great at it, right? They like tables, charts. They like, analysis, or worksheets that incorporate using money, things that play to their strengths of mathematical, logistical stuff, but lend themselves to languages.
Yeah. As I have shared in other episodes, I'm pretty strong in the logical mathematical learning style. And I have to admit that when I was learning Spanish in high school, I did not realize that there were different ways of conjugating verbs until they gave us the charts and actually had to start filling in the verb conjugation. And I was like, I need more copies of this blank piece of paper, because I need to go conjugate every single verb. I
Give
loved
me
that.
all
That
the
was
charts.
Yeah, I know, that was like my favorite part, was conjugating verbs. I was like, oh, give me another verb I can conjugate.
You nerd.
I know it. I
That's awesome.
know. But that was like making the connections for me.
Yeah.
All right. Then we have these two, which the last two usually go hand in hand with another learning style, but we have the interpersonal. So this is the kids that love learning in groups with other people, with interactions. They love to, maybe do some peer editing or peer teaching. They check other people's work, or other people check their work, or they teach group conversations, group discussions, listening to other speakers. Anything that involves another person is going to help them learn.
Right, right. The extroverts tend to
Yes.
love this learning style, right? They want
Yes.
want to help everybody else and be helped in turn. And then in contrast, the intrapersonal learner are the ones that prefer a little bit more structure in their group activities, so that everyone has a specific assignment. So this is the kid that does not want to pitch in to clean up the living room altogether. He wants his little area, and when he's done, he's done. He doesn't want to be
Right.
responsible for anybody else. So these specific roles that make him realize that, oh, this is my very specific task. The collaboration is maybe a little bit more difficult.
Right. They just want to go learn it by themselves and come back and bring back what they've presented and present what they've learned. Yeah. Okay. Tool number 4. So those are the 7 learning styles, and we definitely think it's super helpful to know which way your kid learns. So that's a big tool. Number 3. All right, moving on to tool number 4. Seek outside help. This one's kind of obvious if you don't speak the language, or even if you do, get somebody else to help, because we were talking about different accents and different understanding and different learning styles. So even if you are a native speaker, it'd be fun to bring in outside help. And then if you're helping a kid that's learning at school, obviously their source of outside help is whatever program they're learning in the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I consider myself a fluent Spanish speaker, and I still am not fully confident to teach my kids everything they need to know, simply because I'm a little out of practice, and because there are certain things that an actual teacher or just a native speaker knows so much better than you do, right? Although I will say that native speakers are generally not great at giving you the why of things.
Oh yeah.
If you've ever asked them, well, why do you say it like this instead of like this? Because that's the right way to say it.
Right.
Noted. Okay. Kind of like kids speaking English, well, that's just the way you say it. I don't know why. Go to the textbook if you want a why, right? And once again, coming back to the inhibitions, if you are teaching or assisting a teacher to get your kids through a foreign language, be prepared to look and feel silly. This is something I really struggle with as an adult. And one reason I don't practice my foreign languages more is because I don't like to look dumb. And I know that's so shallow, but it's a difficult thing, especially for teenagers, right? If you have a teenager learning a language, especially if they are kind of the more sensitive type, you have to be really aware of the fact that they're going to shut down if there's any teasing going on, or if they are made to feel dumb. So if you, as the parent or teacher, model an openness, a willingness to look silly and laugh at yourself, the kids will be a lot more likely to do the same thing. Just say, oops, I messed up. That was funny. Try again.
Yes, that is so good. Model it for them the way that learning. It's called learning because you don't know it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You have to mess up. Uh-huh.
Oh, yep. All right. So the last tool that we have for you is real interactions when possible, real humans that speak this language. I guess I realized how important this was when I was teaching my oldest to Spanish, and we were using a program, and it was mostly, computer automated. They were speaking some to it, but we ran into some people that were speaking Spanish, and they asked them a really simple question. It was like, oh, what is your name? And they hadn't gotten to that in the program yet. And they were like, don't know that one. So, but as far as a real interaction goes, that's one of the first things that people ask. Well, hey, what's your name?
Right. Like the programs are great, but they often teach really inane things like, where's the library? How about if we start with my name is, and
my name is,
I don't speak this language. Let's be honest. That's what we learn when we step into a country, right? Yes, for sure. Online is fantastic. And there are so many resources for it now. I mean, just 15 years ago, we didn't have anything for learning these foreign languages, and now it's just everywhere. But in person, there are so many more options than you realize too. And actually, you can do real life interactions online as well. Just make them live with a real person. Do a little research, see if you can find a way to do that. Some other ideas are taking a field trip to your local Latin market. Is there a place where all the people, all the Latin community in your neighborhood goes to shop for food? Could you go and pick up a few things and practice some phrases? People would love it. They'd get a kick out of it. Do you have a Chinatown in your neighborhood or any other small immigrant community where there are a lot of native speakers of a foreign language where you can go try things out? Or just any other shop, a nail salon or a grocery store that is owned by immigrants. And you might even want to go talk to the owner and say, hey, my kids are dying to practice their Korean. I don't know. Can we come and just chat with your people? I'm sure they'd love it. Everybody loves getting attention for their own culture, especially when they live in a foreign country. It is a very hard thing to live in a land full of people that do not share your same culture and your same language. And so to see these people make an attempt to understand you and your culture goes a long way. You can make some real friends doing that. So really fun to get out of your home and try to find some in-person opportunities to practice.
Yes, yes. Another idea I had for an older kid, like a teenager, maybe in high school trying to learn a language or even in college, is babysit. Babysit some kids that speak
Mm.
the language you're trying to learn.
Hmm.
And they are actually probably better at it than you are, and you will
Oh my
learn
gosh,
tons just by
kids are
babysitting.
hard. Like at least the adults know to slow down. The kids are like, you're like, oh no, stop, stop, one word at a time. They're like, why are you so dumb? Why do you not know what we're saying? It's easy, just do it like us. Oh
Oh,
man.
yes. Now we're going to share a little bit about our own personal experience learning languages. And then next, we're going to talk about programs and methods we've used to help others learn. Okay. So, personally, I speak some Spanish, and they just brought in some when I was way back in dinosaur age when I was in third grade. They brought in some Spanish speakers and we learned some Spanish. It was just not very intense at all. But because I had that exposure very young, then when I went to learn it later in high school, picked it up very fast, speaked
Yeah, but
English.
you you lost some English too.
I lost some English. Spoke it like a native speaker, I'm told, and I chalk it up to that experience when I was young. The other language that I have is ASL or sign language, and so when I was young, again in our weekly church services, there was a lady that interpreted every meeting, and that was neat. I just, as a kid, I loved to watch that, and I don't know that I necessarily picked up anything from that because it's not ASL is not a spoken language. It's, you kind of have to know what's being said, but that was really good. And then I've had opportunity in the past and then just recently to really get ASL down and learn it good. And so now I can, I have in the past and am again helping with some interpretation of religious meetings. And it's one thing that is the most helpful thing, and it's a tool that most people use when learning a language, but is consistency. And so
Mhm.
just the opportunity to help interpret on a weekly and biweekly basis has done more for my learning and picking back up ASL than anything else, because it's just having to use it. And kind of a neat thing about, when you're learning to speak another language, oftentimes a Spanish speaker will have some English and be able to help you out. But with ASL, um, they don't have any ability to hear. There's no way for them to have any of the language that you're speaking.
You can't
Although they
cheat.
do, no, you can't cheat, and they can't really help you. Although lip reading is very, very
Mhm.
important. Um, but lip reading alone isn't enough. So anyway, it's one thing that I love is just the consistency of learning a language. So those are some of my experiences in learning language, foreign language.
Well, that's awesome. I had a close friend in college who was big into ASL and had a boyfriend who was deaf and was really into that community. And she was just incredible. Watching her speak ASL, I'm like, wow, I really should have learned that. That's amazing. It's so amazing. I will say something too about interpreting and translating. It makes your brain think about things in a vastly different way. When you have, and I will admit that I'm actually seeing this in my own language now. We joke about it on the podcast all the time, but after all these babies, my brain doesn't work the way it used to. And language is one thing that suffers. And I've
Yeah.
lost some vocabulary that I used to have. And so it makes me, my brain has to spin things a little bit. Okay, I'm not finding that word that I know I used to have to connect these two concepts. How else can I say it? And you learn that in translating for someone
Hmm.
as well, especially if you don't have the words for it. Okay, how else can I phrase this? How else
Yes.
can I spin the meaning so that I'm still communicating what I want to communicate? Maybe not as succinctly or as perfectly, but the thought still gets across. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, I love that thought. I'm just going to interrupt you here for a second because that's what you do with ASL is you don't interpret the actual words that are being said. Often it's not word for word translation. Most of the time what you're doing is interpreting the meaning because when you start interpreting you realize how many oh here's a word loss thing. How many um
Like figures of speech or
yes,
yeah,
yes, that we use in speaking that really don't go
don't make
across
any
to
sense.
another
Yeah.
language. Yeah,
Hmm.
you have to interpret what is meant and not what's said.
Right. You know, I have a really special place in my heart for languages, foreign languages, because they are what I think that they are what bring peace to the world, right? So much of our quarrels and fights and misunderstandings and arguments in life these days are due to misunderstanding or not even trying to understand where the other person is coming from. And when you make the effort and you teach your children to make the effort to learn how someone communicates, it that is a real gesture of goodwill, right? It's saying I care about you and your thoughts and your culture and your community, and I want to better communicate with you. It's a real selfless, I mean, when you're in the country and you can't find a bathroom, it is a bit of a selfish tool. But when you're
Uh,
living in your own country, it really is a selfless act of connection. And so I really encourage people to get outside of their comfort zone and try to make a fool of themselves and communicate, especially if you have an immigrant population. So we live in Phoenix. We have a very high population of Mexican immigrants. It's very easy to just pretend like those people should learn my language or have this kind of high and mighty attitude about it. But they are just people who are struggling to survive in a foreign country that is very difficult. And to go out of my way to communicate with them and help understand them, to hear their stories, I think there's something really powerful about that. And teaching your children the same thing, that they have an obligation to learn to communicate with other human beings, especially if they're going to encounter them a lot. So you could ask yourself, maybe you're struggling to even choose a language for your children. Well, maybe you live in Michigan and there's a lot of French speakers that come from Canada. Maybe that's where you start. There's a few people, or there's a Korean market down the street and you'd really like to ask for something in Korean. Start there. It doesn't really matter. And you don't have to commit to a lifelong learning of a language just because you were picking up a few phrases. It can just be a curiosity and a desire to extend this goodwill to others. So I've told you guys most of my personal experience, but like I said, I have learned so much from people because I've learned their language that it has a really special place in my heart.
all right. So some programs and methods that we've used in our homeschooling to learn what the two languages, I guess, that I'm helping my kids learn are Spanish and ASL as well. We have a larger Spanish population in our area where we are too. And then ASL, we have some friends. So we at first we were using Rosetta Stone when we first started homeschooling a long time ago, 20 almost 20 years ago. Rosetta Stone was the program to use, and so we started doing that. There wasn't really much else out there that was really a good program to use, so we used Rosetta Stone, and it has a computer component, and it has a written component, and it has a speaking component, and so it was good back. I mean, it was many people learned a language using the Rosetta Stone program, so that's what my oldest kids mostly used. um, it was hard to tailor it for really young speakers, though. So I was just using things like We Sing Around the World. I'll link that one in the show notes. That was a good one that we used just for the younger kids and just exposing them to anything we could that way. Audiobooks, CDs, music, whatever we could. We even have some um, radio broadcasts stations that are broadcast in Spanish around here. So just turn those on sometimes. And what we're currently using with all the kids down to those pre-readers, down to, but not including kids that can't read yet is Duolingo. It's an app. You can download it for free. And it's a great, great method. They speak, they hear native speakers, they get to do some reading, some writing. And so that's what we're using. That's a great method. And I would like, maybe Bonnie, you'll have a suggestion, or maybe some of our listeners can help out. I would like something for my very youngest non-reading learners yet, because Duolingo, there is a lot of reading involved in that one. They have to be able to read to be able to choose the correct, tap on the correct one. So those are the programs and methods we've used in our homeschool.
Yeah, we haven't used a lot more than that. Duolingo seems to be a favorite in our home. My kids really enjoy doing it, and they make it fun. There's like badges and things that they can earn.
Yeah.
What's been fun is to let my older children just kind of go crazy. So I've required them to learn at least one foreign language, but once they kind of get a working knowledge, they can go try something else. So my oldest has dabbled in like 3 or 4 languages, which I think is great. I don't think it's necessary to force your child to do like 7 years of one foreign language, although it's helpful that they can actually communicate in one language. But any exposure to foreign language will help them. For the younger kids, honestly, the best thing that I've found is songs, like you mentioned, like getting a CD or a playlist of foreign language songs, especially if they are songs that they recognize already, right? So like Eensy Weensy Spider was one that my kids learned in Spanish, and they went bananas for it. They just cracked up because the words sounded different. And knowing Spanish, I knew that the meaning was a little bit different, but it was just so exciting for them to say these silly words that actually had a meaning to someone, right? So that's a great way to start those little kids. Another program that you might want to look into is called Pimsleur, and it's based on some real great research on foreign language, and that's something that my older boys have enjoyed doing, that program. But really, the sky is the limit. There are so many options out there. I will say finally, though, if there is any way you can incorporate real life experience, especially in a foreign country, do that. Like, what if once a year or once every 5 years you took the family across the border and just practiced some things? Or you decided that, when your oldest graduates, you're all going to go fly somewhere and practice these skills, because it doesn't even really mean something until they have a chance to speak to another human being with it. Pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like what you were sharing about connecting with other people. The more you learn about other people, that if you speak to people in another language, you start to find commonalities and things that are like you and you can relate to, and that I think is a key for going forward into more peace in the future. And so, yeah, I highly encourage people just to expose your kids to language, even if they'll never use a foreign language in their life. Just the exposure is pretty fantastic for their brains, and just because of that, it's worth it, if for no other reason at all.
Yes, absolutely. I've had the opportunity of living in 3 foreign countries and traveling to many, many dozens. And I just have to say that the one thing that comes across every time I go to a new country is that these people are just like us. They have the same problems and the same happiness and joys. And they just, eat a little bit different food, and they sound a little bit different, and they probably look a little bit different. But we are all essentially the same people at heart. And the more effort we put forth to break down those barriers, the happier we'll all be. And it really is. I mean, we joke about world peace being the answer to everything, but this is how we get there, guys. Is we learn what makes other people tick, and we learn how to connect with them. So pretty awesome.
Yeah. So if we can prepare our kids to be able to do that in some measure in the future, then I think we've had success.
Thanks for listening, friends. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to our email and never miss another episode.
Show us some love by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with a friend. Thanks for all your support. We'll talk to you next week.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I always stop so abruptly. I'm like, oh, hello, give Bonnie some cues here. Sorry.
It's okay.